You're listening to the New Heroes of Old NovelCast, written and read by author Greg Bulmash. Season 1, Hell on $5 a Day. Episode 1. Chapter 1. The Blood of a Virtuous Man. Every guy in the room was giving their best practiced cold stare. That was the extent of the hard body language because they were all in hospital gowns that tied in the back. Tough pose options are limited when you're trying to keep a thin layer of cotton between your bare ass and a steel chair. Even more so when not putting your balls on display matters. But the cold stares were on display, maybe even intensified as compensation. They were all tall, except Samson. Alain found that ironic. Samson was the fidget in the bunch, a street hustler. He'd been running a 3-card monte game ever since he was tall enough to peer over the box. He was also the only black guy in the group. Vinny was Bronx-born. You could hear it in his voice. He sounded like every 2-bit street hood Alain had seen in a gangster movie. He was smart, too, but you'd never know it unless you caught him at it. Despite posing as a wisecracking tough guy, he was a few IQ points below genius level, based on the chart Alain had accidentally seen. Still, that only ranked him third in the group of 5. Coming in a distant 5th was Granger. Granger was a Georgia farm boy. He gave Samson and Vinny the hairy eyeball pretty regularly. Didn't like being grouped in with non-whites. Alain didn't know all the facts, but from what he'd heard, 3 cars of local cops had arrived at a barn dance after a disturbance call. They found 20 men lying on the floor and Granger the only one standing, holding a half-full jug of moonshine. He put a couple of cops down too, and he didn't spill a drop until one of them tapped him on the back of the head with a billy club. The last of the group was Reese, number 1 on the IQ chart. Alain had no idea where he was from or what his story was. He was the quietest of the bunch, and the tallest. Not skinny, but wiry. When he spoke, it was slow and measured. Not any kind of laconic drawl, but more a kind of precision to make sure you heard every word, because he wasn't going to repeat any. They were all in the army for one reason. It was wartime, and each had come before a judge who gave them a choice between the army or jail. Fight Hitler and Hirohito for freedom and democracy, or fight your bunkmate for the last roll of toilet paper. You decide. Alain got it when he tried to stop a couple of thugs from hassling a black kid. The kid, maybe 12, was coming out of one of the few stores in Alain's Louisiana town that allowed blacks inside. Even if the shopkeeper didn't mind the boy coming in, the 2 thugs did. He didn't hold any particular love for black folk. Didn't hate them either. Most of the time, he didn't give them much thought. But 2 full-grown men picking a fight with a child was just wrong. By the time the cops were cuffing Alain, the child was gone and the 2 thugs were both unconscious. No one else saw or was willing to testify to what happened. As for the kid, Alain didn't blame him for not wanting to go to the cops and tell the story. He and his family probably would have been hurt pretty bad if they stood up for Alain. The prosecutor portrayed him as a loner, a quiet, big-boned bookworm weirdo who had inexplicably attacked 2 upstanding citizens without provocation. It took the jury all of 30 minutes to come back with a conviction. So there he was, sitting in a surgical gown in an army medical facility, 4 hard cases for company, going through a week-long battery of physical exams and bunking down in an empty infirmary ward. They'd been told they would find out today why they'd been yanked from their units and brought here to be poked and prodded. But everyone was too tough, too hard to gossip and speculate. They all sat silently, trying their best to look mean in their gowns. "Gentlemen," a voice said through the speaker in the ceiling, "please proceed through the door to your left." Being closest to the door, Alain led the group into a darkened room. The room seemed to have no windows, and only the one door was visible. When it shut behind them, they were left in pitch black. None of them had been through any physical exertion recently, but Alain could hear a ragged breathing, almost a panting. The light clicked on. The source of the breathing was a bedraggled man, his skin gray, his hair greasy and clumped, his features gaunt. He had been placed in a cage and he sat cross-legged, his back hunched, and his head tilted up just enough to give them a hooded, baleful glare. He had perfected the look all of them had been trying to achieve just moments ago. His clothing looked like it had been borrowed a long time ago from a movie studio. Something off of Ronald Colman in A Tale of Two Cities, or better yet, Leslie Howard in The Scarlet Pimpernel. Velvet coat, lace cuffs, pants that ended at the calf. It might have been fine once, but now it was frayed and threadbare, as if the man had put it on in the 19th century and hadn't taken it off since. The voice came from the speaker in the ceiling. "Gentlemen, this is a vampire." The group snickered, muttering jokes and comments of disbelief under their breaths. Even Alain. Vampires were Bela Lugosi. "I want to suck your blood," he thought. "He's real," the voice chided. "So why are you showing him to us?" Then he shouted at the speaker. "We're not," said the voice. "We're showing you to him." "Huh?" The lights went out and the sound of metal scraping against metal could be heard, as if the cage were opening. Samson screamed. The others started shouting. Alain remained quiet and moved slowly backward, one hand groping behind him, one out in front of him to ward off any incoming bodies. When he finally reached a wall, he began sliding along it, trying to find the door. He found the door frame, but the inside of the door was smooth, knobless, and the space between it and the frame, maybe if he had a crowbar. He moved a few feet away from the door, backing himself into a corner. It wasn't the best position, but it was the one that left the smallest part of him exposed and limited any vectors of attack. The shouting and screaming went on all around him. Granger was begging to be let out. Vinny was shouting, challenging obscenities. Reese was shouting for everyone to shut the hell up. And Samson's screaming stopped. Granger's screaming began. Vinny's voice became more desperate. The challenging obscenities gave way to rapid repetitions of "Holy Christ!" Granger kept screaming and Reese stopped calling for quiet. Vinny, like Alain, seemed to have picked a single spot, and Alain didn't know where Reese was until Granger's screaming stopped. Alain heard the thud of two bodies colliding and assumed Reese had tackled the vampire. This was quickly backed up by Reese's voice shouting, "You goddamn cocksucker!" Then he got back some of his bravado, cheering Reese on. "Get that goddamn vamp, Reese!" There was the sound of feet moving, but it seemed like just one pair, as if Reese was up and dancing around the vampire. Alain could hear the sound of flesh hitting flesh. Alain didn't much like Reese, but he had to give him credit for trying to box a vampire in the dark. The vampire muttered,
"I tire of this,"
and it went quiet except for some feral-sounding grunting and slurping. Vinny was now mumbling in a whimpering voice, "Hail Mary, full of grace." The grunting stopped. Vinny continued praying and Alain listened with all his might to hear a footstep, a rustle of dilapidated velvet. Then Vinny's whimpers gave way to a short-lived scream which cut off with a gurgle in his throat. There was more grunting and slurping for a couple of minutes. Then it stopped. Alain pressed back harder against the wall. There was no point in praying. If God was interested in helping him, God wouldn't have put him in this room in the first place. Even after minutes of the darkness, Alain's eyes hadn't adjusted. It was just too black. All he could do was listen. He slowly stretched one arm out in front of him, moving it side to side, like a blind man's cane, his other arm pulled back and cocked to let a fist fly if the searching arm made contact with anything. The searching arm was grabbed from the side, yanked to pull him away from the wall, then twisted up behind his back in a submission hold. Alain could feel the vampire's breath on his neck.
Do you know the best part about being a vampire?
A voice whispered in his ear. Alain didn't reply.
Not a fucking thing,
The vampire said.
The other four were pathetic, but you smell of character. It has been a long time since I tasted the blood of a virtuous man.
The vampire trailed off in reverie, but his voice was quickly back in Alain's ear.
I am sorry for what will happen to you. I truly am.
The teeth sank into Alain's neck. A scream escaped his throat, and consciousness fled. Wait, don't go yet. Please hit like and subscribe to encourage my behavior. Knowing people are reading or listening is what keeps me going. If you can't wait for the other episodes, check out the audiobook at bounce.ws/books. That's bounce.ws/BOOKS. And please visit bulmash.com for the latest updates on the novels, podcasts, and the journey from here to Season 12. The New Heroes of Old NovelCast is read and produced by Greg Bulmash and distributed by Bulmash Media, LLC. Copyright 2026 by Greg Bulmash. Music is from the YouTube audio library. The opening music is Jungle by Akash Gandhi. The closing music is Better by Anno Domini Beats. Thanks for listening, and remember to come back soon.